Hi, welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 107. And this episode is called How Not to Be a Spiritual Asshole. So I guess we have to make this episode seems like a strange thing, but it feels like we do. I'm Katherine Bird, and I'm here with Michelle Hawk, my shaman sister. And go ahead and subscribe and like and get ready to share and all of the amazing things that you know what to do. Go ahead and do those. And anything else, Michelle, I'm supposed to say at the top of the podcast here? I feel like we haven't done this in so long. We've been on a break for the last month. I've been moving and setting up my new temple space here in Santa Fe. And we took off a month to give space for those changes and transformations. So welcome back. And I hope that this last month, if you are on our list of watching as you go, you got to catch up on some of the other 106 episodes that we have on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, all the places, and have gotten to tune into some different things. Hi, Michelle.
Hello. Speaking of your beautiful new temple space, everybody just, Kat, say something and so people can have another look at that.
Yay, it's so beautiful. I'm so happy. I just finished painting this beautiful gold wall and setting up my space where I can do my practices and meditations here. And it's just felt amazing, incredible. If you can't see it, you can imagine it being beautiful. And I have my tea set, my Chinese Gong Fu tea set over here to my left, and lots of candles and crystals and everything, and more art, and more to come for sure. And I must say that this has been a dream. It's been a fantasy of mine to have a space like this that's this large, that's this devoted to my spiritual practice and my work. And I had an intensive client come this last weekend, and so we got to be in here. We got to sit and have tea together after we did like on the table, hands-on work. And it was incredible, and such, I feel just so grateful and such a blessed experience to be able to have this space I've dreamed of for so long. And what a difference it makes to have a space that's devoted to your practice and have a space that's devoted to what it is you're calling in. And it just makes it so easy to know that this is where I'm going to come in the morning and sit down, and or I'm going to do my qigong, and I'm going to roll around on the floor and stretch, and I have my yoga swing, and I'm going to do all of these practices here. And to know that this is where I'm going to come in the evening and sit before I go to bed. And so you might not have access to a whole space, but to have something, some place that is a marker and a designated space for your practice is really important. So
I almost feel like we're shifting gears a little bit into creating temple space in your home.
Creating temple space in your home.
So we'll have to bookmark that, and absolutely maybe we can have a little tour of your temple space. And I feel like people haven't seen my temple space either.
No.
The one wall. So maybe that'll have to be a future episode of giving a tour of the Shaman Sisters.
Right. Maybe that. Yeah. Okay. So there we have another episode topic that we're going to bring in for you guys and give you a tour of how we do things.
Awesome.
In our spaces, which might help. I think that there's a lot of people who sometimes don't know what to do. Like, oh, okay, well, I should like have an altar, and what does that look like? And what do I put on there? And how do I maintain it? And so, yeah, well, sounds like a good one. We'll do that. Put on the list.
Anyway, back to our topic for today, shifting gears once again a little bit. How to not be a spiritual asshole. First of all, like, it's kind of a bummer that we even have to record this episode, right? Just like you were saying, Kat, it's a little bit like, what does that even mean? And yet, I know the inspiration from this episode came from us seeing people posting and writing a lot of really stupid shit about under the guise of spirituality and under the guise of, some type of next level consciousness mindset, and yet it ends up causing harm and being hurtful and coming across like a total asshole move. So we're going to invite you into conversation with us about some of that today and look at what are some of the ways in which we might be inadvertently being total spiritual assholes. And or maybe we see people doing this and some of the implications of that, and then how to not do that and what to do instead and what to say instead. That's where this is coming from today.
Yeah. I have to say, Michelle, totally off topic, but you look great. You're like super tan and buff. And like, if you can't see her online, if you're on, you know, Spotify or something, if you can't see her, she looks amazing. She's like super fit and tan, and it's definitely summer in Portland.
Thank you. I mean, all I've been doing lately is like working out and paddleboarding and walking my dog and serving my existing clients. You probably haven't heard a whole lot from me because I haven't really been writing much lately. So I am, you know, serving the people who do come to me. But yeah, I've got guns now. Check that out. Thank you. Yeah, feeling good. I just was out on the river early this morning, so I am definitely like extra sun-kissed as well. But yeah, this is
Okay,
sort of
back to being a spiritual. That was being spiritually not an asshole. Recognizing when your friends look amazing and saying so. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, and maybe you've seen it, maybe you've experienced it, and it can be really troubling because it might be coming from somebody that you respect, or it might be coming from someone who you've seen their posts or their writing, or tuned in with them about certain things, and you're like, oh yeah, this person seems to really be spiritual and have their shit together, and is saying things that are in alignment with higher consciousness, and then something comes at you in a certain way. And this can be really it can be really debilitating for people, because oftentimes we do put spiritual teachers and leaders and so on a bit of a pedestal, and we start to see that maybe they aren't human, and that they are above us, that, you know, they're better or different. And then because we are taking in their words, we're taking in the teachings to hopefully better ourselves. And so they have a weight and a power and an influence. And so often people who even kind of strive to have that weight and power and influence, then once they have it, aren't always being super conscious about the way that that weight and power is affecting others and affecting the world, and being a bit sort of self-centered and self-absorbed in the way that they're communicating things. Mm-hmm. So where do we want to start with this, Michelle?
Yeah, I think I want to start with perhaps some intention behind this, because from what I've seen, and I have seen some instances of people in positions where they have a platform or they have an audience or they're accustomed to having a certain level of influence in their communication. I don't think that these people are out to hurt anybody. I really don't think that they're out to deliberately cause harm. I think it's coming from a place of carelessness, and often in cases of privilege, right? You know, let's also look at the, you know, a lot of the people that we're talking about of these kind of neo-spiritual practitioners and thought leaders and coaches and whatever happen to be a lot of white people who are in this very privileged group, Kat and myself included, you know, mm-hmm. knowing that we have a certain level of income and a certain level of education and growing up with certain privileges, etc. You know, we're not exempting ourselves from that, but knowing that a lot of harm and a lot of unintended damage can come from thoughtlessness when we're not being impeccable and educated about the implications of what we're saying. So I do want to say that there is a lot of intersection, and some of the examples that I have seen have taken place in the context of the Black Lives Matter movement, the volume being turned up way, way high on that now. And also in terms of the COVID situation. Those are kind of the two big areas where I've been seeing a lot of this lately. But this is not a new thing. I will say that the things that we're talking about have been going on for a long time, just in terms of the way in which people are twisting spiritual language and spiritual concepts to accomplish either a certain marketing goal or to accomplish a certain tone with their messaging. This is a lot of advertising, messaging, copywriting, or message like conversation where we're seeing a lot of these things. And I'm betting once we start naming some of them, you'll recognize them too.
But also, I was seeing this in from our masculine, from our male counterparts, in relationship to when women are coming out and talking about things and talking about sexual abuse and sexual trauma and being in that space. That also was pretty prevalent last year. So that was another space where I was seeing a lot of this.
Yeah, in the Me Too movement. That's a really good point. And it's so easy to kind of get caught up in the moment of where we are now, right? Like, oh, the Me Too movement,
remember last year when we were when we had this other big thing going on? Oh, well, now we're really focused over here.
Right.
But it's about so many things. Like we can see it in the realms of COVID, but also politics, in the realms of all kinds of things. It's everywhere, and it can happen on social media really easily. But it's also happening in retreats and workshops and events and community gatherings and all kinds of places, and even in session work with people, because I know I know you, Michelle, probably have experienced that where somebody comes and tells you about their experience with the practitioner, and you're like, oh, okay. Wow, that didn't really seem to help you to have that opinion on you. But right. Okay, let's
the internal cringe experience and trying not to be like, are you fucking kidding me, out loud to the client.
Yeah, right. Like, I can't believe somebody said that to you. Okay. Right. So let's talk a little bit more deeply about what it is. Maybe some examples of what we're talking about, maybe some places that we're seeing this raise its head.
Yeah. One of the biggest ones that I feel like has come up in terms of conversation before in this podcast, I feel like I talk about it a lot because it really ticks me off, is what I call law of attraction shaming, where someone distorts, right? And we know what the law of attraction is, right? Of like, okay, if you hold a certain frequency or you're thinking about a certain frequency, then you're going to attract that to you, right? And we know that this principle, it is an energetic principle based in correspondence and resonance, right? So knowing that like supports like, which is one of the principles of homeopathy, the principle of correspondence that we see in alchemy, that we see in lots of different traditions, right? Like this does have an actual energetic root. And yet distorting that principle of the law of attraction shaming to make it be essentially this comes out as your life sucks or your whatever isn't the way that you want it because you're not doing a good enough job of holding this frequency, right? Like you're not making enough money because you haven't worked on your abundance consciousness, or your health isn't the way that you want it to be because you're not in the mindset of health and vitality, right? So it ends up distorting this, this universal principle of resonance and harmonious alignment and correspondence to be this really shamey, blamey, weird, this weird judgy thing that completely overlooks all of these other factors involved. The reality is that we are so complicated and we live in a very complex, multi-dimensional world that is constantly under influence of many different vibrations. So to say to someone, you're not making enough money, or you're in this poverty mindset, or you're not making enough money because you have a poverty mindset, like it's completely ignoring all of these other factors involved that are contributing to that on the physical level, meaning in terms of education and job opportunity and race and gender and all of these things, and on the emotional, intellectual consciousness level, and on the spiritual level, right? In terms of, yeah, there might be some money mindset beliefs about there, or there might be some simple education involved and someone doesn't know how to make a budget, right? Or there could be poverty consciousness carried down through the generations and as a lineage thing. But to gloss over all of that and draw this correlation is completely inappropriate and really a very harmful distortion of that energetic principle.
Right, because it diminishes the other person. It, in some way, locks them into a further deepening into a belief pattern that maybe they do have. Maybe they are in poverty consciousness, but this can actually anchor that more deeply into their system because it starts to create more thoughts around that, and they start to label themselves as that and be like, oh, this is the thing I have to work on. This is the thing that I am. This is my cross to bear. This is my karma. This is my whatever. And um, it's not inspiring. It's not inspiring them to something that is creative and, oh, this part of being in touch with money, maybe that's seemed really foreign to you, but here's like a fun way to engage with it, or here's an interesting way to think about it, or here's a way to be inspired about how to get new clients, or all of these different things that we can help people to basically change their poverty consciousness, change their mindset about something in a very positive way. Like, we don't have to beat the shit out of people to get them to change. We don't have to shame them into change. But we've been taught in America a lot of times, especially, that shame is a great way to get people to change their way of being, because that's what we were done in school, right? If you weren't doing good in school, the teacher would shame you and hope that you would get better.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it ends up crystallizing in the identity structure a lot. And Kat, that's basically what we were saying in a lot of these circumstances. And it's sometimes people do this accidentally, right? Like
Oh,
I've definitely done this.
I lost your audio.
Oh, hello.
Oh,
Can you hear
there
me?
you're back. You're back.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm here. But I can think of an example in particular where I did that completely unintentionally, where I wasn't trying to create a shameful experience, and yet it ended up kind of crystallizing in this person's identity. I was doing a session on a friend, and just an energy clearing and a chakra balance. And I said to him, "Oh, your root chakra is a little unstable, right? And so your root chakra isn't fully activated." And what I meant was, right now in this moment, your root chakra is needing some extra attention. But he took that to mean kind of as a permanent basis that his root chakra was always off and that there was something wrong with him. And so then, the next time I saw him months later, he was saying something to me about like, oh yeah, I know that you said my root chakra's off. So I just always, make sure. And it ended up having like a really kind of happy side effect. He was like, I always I talk to trees and I do gardening. And so he ended up putting a lot of work into his root chakra because of what I had said. But it had landed as this kind of crystallizing in his identity structure that, quote, there's something wrong with my
Right.
root chakra, even though that's not at all what I meant.
Right. And this is a really easy way to be a spiritual asshole, is to tell people things about themselves that they're going to anchor into their identity, that you might not think that this is going to have this huge effect on them. And this is especially true for my brilliant psychic friends and my people who do readings. A lot of times, especially if you do readings and you're not actually giving them any sort of like, here's something, a way to work with this so that you can improve this thing, then a lot of times people will go away. And then from then on, they're like, well, this person said this about me, so that's who I am. And that's what I carry. That's what I'm holding. That's what I am. That's who I am. And this keeps people in a stuck space sometimes, and it's not intentional. Generally, we as practitioners have that higher awareness and understanding that here's some information that I'm giving you so that you can actually work on your shit. But people who don't come from our background kind of think, oh, here's some information that is now the truth.
Yeah, I want to yes and this, right? Because another way to be a spiritual asshole is to give people just enough information that it causes some disruption without actually giving them the support or tools or techniques for them to be able to work with it.
Right.
So like an example of that would be telling someone that they have an entity attachment and then saying, okay, bye.
Yeah, happens all the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
All the time do I hear from people who say, some practitioner said that I have this, or I have these negative spirits attached to me, or somebody at a party said that I have, this thing, I have this dark hole in my gut, or like all of these pieces. Well, that's just going to freak somebody out. So if you don't have some sort of uh, practices, support, healing work, or somebody to refer somebody to is also fine and valid, then it's not often very helpful to be telling people really charged, intense things about themselves if they don't have a pathway to actually deal with what you're telling them is going
Mhm.
on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good way to be a spiritual asshole. And I would actually even argue that in those cases it can be more harmful to share that information than to not share that information. And I know I used to like back, years and years ago when I was kind of at the beginning of flexing my psychic muscles, so to speak. I used to operate on the principle that if I receive information, it is supposed to be shared. And then and this was like, I don't know what, 10, 12 years ago, right? And I've definitely done a lot of growing since then. And now my perspective on that is that I, as a human teacher, Michelle, have a responsibility to make in terms of perspective and judgment and discernment in whether this piece of information that I'm receiving from source would be helpful and supportive to share with this person.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the context, depending on a whole bunch of factors, whether or not I have permission, right? Like a lot of people, especially kind of our newbie psychic friends, it's sort of the like, oh, if I'm at a party and I get a message for somebody or I see something about them, like I'm just supposed to tell them, right?
Right.
I've been
Consent
there.
is sexy even in the psychic realms.
Yes. Consent, sexy and necessary, right? It is absolutely vital to ask permission of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, whether, or do you have any type of relationship with this person? Do you have any type of context upon which you are inviting further conversation? Because psychic information is really intimate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very personal thing, and it can be in fact more harmful and more disruptive to share some of that information without having a relationship, without having a conversation, without having a container, and without having a supportive actionable pathway for that person to feel empowered and activated and excited by that information instead of scared and overwhelmed and somehow crystallizing it or internalizing it as a harmful self belief or self image.
Right. Because if you don't actually know someone, you don't know them. Like you don't know their support system. You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know if they have practitioners that they're able to see. You don't know what their financial situation is around that. You don't know what their practices, and you don't know anything, right? You don't know if they're mentally unstable and they're going to go with this in a way that's going to cause extreme harm to them. And this is a pretty big learning point for practitioners, and this is something that I talk about a lot in my channeling programs and in the healership programs, is that there is a huge responsibility that comes with receiving information. And a lot of times people don't think through the ethics of what they're doing. That is what I'm doing truly ethical? And or am I just showing off? Am I taking advantage of my ability? Am I trying to get love? Am I trying to get attention? Am I trying to heal the world? Am I trying to help people but I haven't actually been asked? Those are really deep inquiry questions that we have to ask. Just because there's a skill, an ability, doesn't mean that that inner work, the ethical work, the self-reflection work, the boundary work has been done. So skill often pops up, and then we have to go through this whole journey of figuring out how to work with that skill in an ethical, aligned way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So with that, as we're kind of looking at, okay, here are ways to be a spiritual asshole, what we would do instead is do what Kat is talking about of cultivating that inner integrous process and the process of discernment and being able to filter information through our own personal system. And here I want to add, because I think, you know, for all of us who love channeling and who love connecting with our spirit guides and teachers and having these psychic awarenesses, the guides and the information, the psychic information that we're getting isn't necessarily run through an earth filter, slash I can pretty much guarantee that it's not. If it's coming from a spirit guide, you know, in the non-embodied realms, things work a little differently. So yeah, okay, so here's a piece of information. But again, to translate that, that's part of the job of the practitioner, is translating that into a physical context. And it is, you know, part of your responsibility to not be an asshole, to have this be a clear channel so that you can make that judgment call, right? And so doing what Kat was talking about in terms of your internal ethical investigation and practicing discernment and knowing, you know, what is in highest alignment. Sometimes we don't know. You know, I will be totally honest with that and say sometimes we have no idea. And sometimes, you know, I definitely have had moments of sitting on a piece of intuitive information of like, for a while, being like, okay, what do I do with this? What is my responsibility as a practitioner? What is my responsibility in relationship to this person? But don't take for granted that you have to share it. Don't take for granted that you have to keep it to yourself. Having a buffer and having some inquiry is going to help a lot, no matter what situation that you're in, of just take a moment before you share things and run it through your filter.
Yeah. And, you know, there's plenty of times where I've gotten something and been like, this is my read on this person. And having to just, you know, sit with it and be like, okay, well, is that going to help them if I tell them that? Is that going to be helpful information? And don't be afraid to take some space. Don't be afraid to take some time with what you're getting. Not everything has to come straight out of your mouth. But yeah, this is a really important one. I recently this is in my Healer's Process book. And then yesterday I was having a conversation with a practitioner about this. And then I got on Facebook and my memory from 3 years ago was about this topic. So it's important right now. So underline it and highlight it, that this is something to pay attention to. And on the other side of that, if someone comes up to you and tells you something at a party, take it with a grain of salt. Do not take on what someone else is offering you. There are a lot of people out there who have very awakened psychic centers, who are very ungrounded, who see entities everywhere, who are not necessarily going to give you the support or the guidance that you need to be able to deal with what they're talking about. Find a practitioner you really love, you really respect, you really tune in with, and yeah, do some work. But really, if somebody's just offhandedly giving you a diagnosis, or, you know, giving you something that seems really heavy, you know, have a second opinion, tune in with yourself, don't freak out, breathe. You're probably fine. And if this is something that you've come across, I would suggest going back to, we did a couple of episodes about entities, probably within the last 20 or 30 episodes, about if you have an entity attachment or you don't have an entity attachment.
And you probably don't have one, but in case you do, yeah.
Right. So I would go back to those if this is something that's coming up for you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, so what are other ways that people can be a spiritual asshole? We have the law of attraction shaming, and we have sharing information inappropriately.
Well, also on the shaming ticket, we have this sort of victim shaming that goes around, that is the same as the law of attraction in some ways, but that basically that if something bad has happened to you, then you have created that by being in that vibration, by having that thought, by not being high vibe enough, by calling it in with your karma, by your past life where you did this horrible thing, how else do whatever it is, you called in and you created this horrible experience that you've had in your life. So you are to blame for your reality, is sort of a little tagline on that one. Mm-hmm. You're to blame for your reality.
Right. Awesome. That is a healthy, not a healthy, that is a helpful intersection there to look at those in conjunction with each other. To that, I want to add another way to be a spiritual asshole is to make assumptions about what is more evolved or less evolved. I'm doing air quotes on this in case you're listening, right? So looking at, money is one example of this. Like, oh, if you are more evolved and you are more following your bliss and you're more in alignment, you will make more money, right? Like there's this assumption that those things go
Mm-hmm.
together. That wealth consciousness and abundance consciousness is somehow a hallmark of a more consciously developed, awakened person. And that if
Right.
you're not making money, that you somehow must be less evolved. So there's that really weird.
Yeah, it's strange. It's
Yeah,
become this very strange aspect of our spiritual communities that wealth equals consciousness and equals evolution. And not quite so sure. Michelle and I have talked about this quite a bit. And at one point, I was like, does it really mean that I am more spiritually evolved if I am able to generate more wealth? Or does it really mean that I'm more spiritually evolved if neither of it matters? If that isn't the thing that's triggering me and causing me to have stress or causing me to, be focused on this part of my life to the um, detriment of the other parts of my life, the actual spiritual parts of my life. uh,
right.
this is an inquiry that we each get to make for ourselves. But that if you're feeling like super shamed out there over this whole wealth consciousness thing, like like maybe just loosen up the energy around that a little bit, like let that go a little bit. Yeah, if you want to make more money, great, and more power to you, and do what you need to do to make that happen. But if it's spiraling you out of control into really deep places of pain, then maybe there's another path that would feel more creative and inspiring for you.
Yeah. And this same principle can be applied to really any other system of hierarchy or like assigned some sort of arbitrary value of which is the more evolved or the less evolved version on the scale, right? So we have the
Right.
financial scale. We also have like veganism or a plant-based diet, right?
Right.
Like who all knows a self-righteous asshole vegan out there? Probably raising your hand. And my favorite joke, or one of my favorite jokes is, okay, so you go to a party and how do you know if someone's vegan?
I don't know. How do you know?
Oh, they'll let you know. Right? And don't get me wrong, like I love my vegan friends. Like my roommate is vegan and she's wonderful and she's a total non-asshole about it. But like there are definitely those people. I eat animal products. It works with my body. I've done a lot of careful consideration around it. I feel good about my choice. I make conscious choices in terms of how I'm engaging with eating animal protein, but it the whole judgment based system of there is one way to be more evolved with your diet, with your money, with your relationship choices, like the whole poly is more evolved than monogamy thing. That's another
Oh,
way that
oh
we see.
gosh, yeah, that's one.
Right. And then somehow if you're like, anywhere on this scale where you're like super poly or you're super monogamous or you're anywhere in between, like if you're somehow anything less than super poly, it must mean that you're less evolved or less conscious or less loving. And so, or that one, let's see, money, food,
But
health.
also like psychic ability, like if you see things, and this has a lot to do with seeing. People often take this one on. If you see things, then that means you're super conscious and evolved.
Right here. Uh-huh. But it would be an asshole move of me to say that that makes me more evolved, for example, than Kat, who feels things and is very kinesthetically oriented in her psychic ability. And she's
Right.
amazingly psychic.
And I see things, but not like Michelle sees things. So basically, you know, if we are setting ourselves apart and we are seeing anyone else as being less than, that's not actually being spiritual. Like being spiritual, being psychically attuned, having ability or skill does not mean that you are any better than any other human on this planet. And so often what we see is that I'm woke and you're a muggle and I know what's going on. I can see behind the veil. I can go to the fifth dimension. I know who my guides are. I'm connected to the galactic realm. I can take more medicine than you. Like, whatever it is, that somehow that there's this competition on humaning, and there isn't. You are where you're at. Bravo. Great. Amazing. Keep working on yourself because you're not there yet. None of us are. And this other person, these other people on our planet, no matter how much we're like, what is wrong with you? They're where they are. They're in their evolutionary cycle, in their growth, in their place where they're at. And we're all, you know, that whole idea of we are one does not just mean the people that you like. We are all of us one. And all of us, you know, all of these other people that you don't like they're represented inside of you. As much as you don't want to admit that and want to escape to another dimension, like, we're all in this together and none of us are better than anyone else. And we forget that because we're like, oh, well, but I'm so much better because I know these things, and I'm so much better because I've been exposed to these things. Well, that's a mark of privilege. If you have been exposed to spiritual teachings, if you have read books that tell you that fast food is full of crap, if you have been able to travel to a foreign country and trek into the jungle for 2 weeks and take medicine with indigenous people, you are privileged. Part of the deal. Because most people on the planet don't have access to those things. It's nowhere within their field that even exists.
Yeah. So removing the whole more evolved, less evolved, more conscious, less conscious completely from your consideration is a good way to not be a spiritual asshole. And that even goes, I'll extend that even beyond the human realm, right? Like I talk with people every now and then who somehow end up saying something along the lines of like, oh, maybe, you know, maybe this dog or this animal like did something bad in a previous life, so they got demoted to being an animal from being a human.
I said that last week. You know, joking. I was joking, but I was like, there's a donkey near my house and I drive by the donkey and he's so cute and he's so little, but he's so alone. And my heart breaks every time I see this donkey. And I was on the phone with Michelle and we were driving down the road. I saw the donkey and I was like, oh, this poor donkey. Oh, he's such bad karma, this donkey.
Right? But like, I know you were joking. Actually think this, right? Of like, oh, somehow like being an animal is less evolved than being a human, right? And humans are the pinnacle of spiritual evolution and right? I want to just spit all over that idea because, you know, if y'all know any like truly like heart connected animals, there's no fucking way we're more evolved than they are. I want to say about that.
But we're all getting our lessons. We're all on the path in one way or another. We're all in different places, and the more that we can, this is about cultivating compassion and spiritual skill or gift or psychic whatever or energetic ability. If it's not married into a consistent devotion into developing a more compassionate heart, what's the accomplishment that we're getting?
Yeah.
So that's how not to be a spiritual asshole.
Love it. Okay. What, and all of these that we've been talking about are sort of existing in general in life, right? Like none of these are unique to COVID or Black Lives Matter or Me Too or anything. These are things that we've been seeing for a long time. They're hallmark asshole, spiritual asshole moves. What have we been seeing more recently?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so one thing, because I was talking about the men and so on, but just this, like, sort of an inability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, an inability to just be present with someone else has had a radically different life experience than me. Someone's current life experience is really different. And to be able to have that experience, right? That's like the essence of empathy. You know, we run around talking about, oh, I'm such an empath. I can't even be around people because I just feel so many things and it hurts me so much. And I just don't even want to, like, I don't know why they're protesting because it's really hurting my soul because I feel everything so deeply.
Right.
It's not about you. Like, stop.
Well, and also, you know, this like I've seen people write or seen people vocalize what you just said, right? Of like,
I've seen it. Yeah.
oh yeah, and it's this total, like, that's such an asshole move, seriously, of like, I'm an empath and this disruption, you know, looking at like, oh, the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests are creating disruption and violence in my psychic field, and so I wish people would just stop protesting already because it's uncomfortable for me. Major asshole alert. Not okay, people, not okay. And it's, you know, completely again, just ignoring other people's lived experience. It's a complete inability to have empathy, right? This is also a very shamanic thing that we're talking about, of like the ability to hold multiple truths and multiple realities at the same time. It's a very shamanic practice and ability. And yet, you know, you don't need to be super highly developed in your spiritual practice to do that. You just need to be able to imagine that something else might also be true at the same time as you're having your true experience.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And something that I have never seen such asshole behavior from any group of people than the spiritual people in my community on my Facebook feed. That comes from that essence of like, I am unwilling to hold that multiple truths might be occurring in this situation at the same time. And there's a lot of like, this is the truth, this is my truth, this is what I know to be true. I watch some YouTube videos, I know what's up, I'm aware, I'm woke, I'm seeing the multidimensional aspects of this reality. You're an asshole and you don't know what you're talking about, and why are you so stupid? You know, like, hold on. Like, I get it, this is what you believe, or this is what you've figured out in some sort of way, but it doesn't mean that someone else's view or opinion or reality or truth is something that you need to beat up on them over. Even if you don't agree with them, there's like civil discourse that we could engage with in our communities.
Yeah. To that, I want to say, like, a little segue off of that. Hallmarks of being a spiritual asshole are thinking that you know more than other people, whether or not you actually do. Like, and I will totally admit, I definitely fall into this boat sometimes. Like, I have told Kat, and she has acknowledged to me that I am a little bit like this, where like, I am the smartest person in the room a bunch of the time. And yet I also know, like, it's not helpful for me to assume that I am the smartest person in the room. So I try to check myself out of that and know also that there are plenty of other truths that are also concurrent with my own experience, and that whatever belief that I have about myself about being the smartest person in the room, whether or not that's helpful, I do negate that through this opening to other truths and possibility and reality, and holding, like, not taking anything for granted that I actually know anything at all, right? And so it's this weird, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird balance of like, I'm not presupposing any knowledge, I'm presupposing my ability to think critically and to hold multiple perspectives. And that, in my mind, that's what makes me the smartest person in the room, whether or not that's actually true.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was something that you were saying earlier about the way that we are sort of we're engaging with that empathy, and it was about Black Lives Matter. So another one that has come up in that realm is where we take a spiritual truth that we are all one, or, that that's a good one that we like to use, a spiritual truth. And we warp our spiritual truths to basically negate someone else's experience, their lived experience, their felt experience. Well, if we're all one, then we're all one. So what are you complaining about? Like, we're all one. Aren't we all one? I don't see color because we're all one. And that will mostly come from our white friends and people who haven't had the same level of systemic oppression that other people have had. And this can come up in a lot of different areas and so on. But this is another thing, is where anytime you are taking a spiritual truth and using it to hurt someone else, it's now, I don't know if it's, I don't know what that turns it into, but
right. It's a distortion, right? Like it is, I think that's a really good example. And I saw something that a friend of mine wrote, actually, who, she's a really wonderful person, and I trust her opinion about a lot of things. And she was coming clean about saying all lives matter, right? Because she, she's vegan, she's very spiritually activated, she's super active in her meditation practice. She's a white woman, right? And she was writing this thing saying, like, I used to say all lives matter with a lot of conviction, because that is a truth that I do hold dear to my heart. And I believe, again, all lives matter. Like, I'm not eating animals. I'm not, I'm advocating for all lives. And so for me, it didn't seem like there was this, or it felt like there was a disconnect to be focusing on Black Lives Matter. But then as soon as I realized the harm that I was inadvertently causing by saying all lives matter, and then she did, she owned it, and she totally changed where she was coming from in that. But it was coming from exactly this standpoint of, this spiritual truth of,
all
yes,
lives
all
matter.
lives
It's
matter.
true. Yeah.
Yes, and we are all one. Yes, that is also true. And yet, it is harmful. It is violent to say that, because it is inherently negating the experience of this whole group of people who have had a very different physical lived experience, a very different lineage and karmic experience in terms of what they're holding from their ancestors, and the systemic violence and institutionalized violence that they're experiencing every single day. So it's not that it's not true, it's just that it is a total asshole move because of the harm that it is perpetuating and allowing to continue. So
Which is the same as not all men, right? We got it. You personally, you man, you conscious spiritual guy, you're not that guy. But when you say that, it negates the lived felt experience of every woman on the planet. So instead of defending yourself, it would be nice if you would ally with the people who need a little bit of support right now to reach your level of equity in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you seen, Kat, have you seen the hashtag, like, I don't want your love and light? I think it is.
No, I haven't seen that.
I've seen that in a handful of places, actually, and I really like it. It's coming. I feel like the places that I've seen it are primarily BIPOC people or speakers or advocates who do education around like DEI work, right? So diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and so they're educating a lot of white people, basically. And they have a lot of white people who are, tuning into the love and light aspect of this and saying, like, oh, well, here, I support you and I'm offering you love and light. And they're saying the hashtag, I don't want your love and light, because, like, your love and light isn't doing shit for me right now.
Right.
Because it's not action. It's not taking a stand. It's not using your platform. It's not using your resources. It's not standing with me as a human. It's this spiritually avoidant tactic of saying, oh, by, like, I'm holding this higher frequency, it is my privilege to not be in the protest.
Right.
It is my privilege to not be more directly involved in this circumstance. So I'm going to send you my love and light. And that's another asshole move of thinking that, like, oh, your love and light is is going to be worth shit, honestly. Like I that's what I want to say is like, how is that worth shit if you're not also auditing your resources and hiring BIPOC people when you can, or prioritizing your funds going to BIPOC business owners, and voting and protesting and using your platform and using your resources and all of these other things. Like, our love and light doesn't mean shit
Right.
if it's not accompanied with these other things.
Well, at the essence of all of these things that we've been talking about, there is an avoidance of personal responsibility. And it's like using spirituality, spiritual truths, something to really avoid responsibility. And, a lot of times, those that are drawn to our spiritual communities, like, we're the rebels, we're the black sheep, didn't fit into our families quite, right? We don't want to work regular jobs. We're, sort of in this interesting space. And while the rebel is an amazing archetype that can get a lot of stuff done and create amazing change, there can also be that aspect of trying to shirk responsibility. And so we all hold that because we are the outliers of this society. We don't actually fit in completely into this society. If you go into the regular, normal, everyday world, we are the odd bugs. And so then we've created our own little community over here, and we're still operating in some of the lower frequencies of the archetypal energy that we're running that got us here. So that stuff we need to look at and clean up and acknowledge within ourselves that, yeah, we've all kind of got that a little bit, where we don't want to be told what to do and how to think or what to be, all of these things.
That's a super important one. I really love that you brought that up, right? Looking at, okay, what subconscious programming are we running simply by virtue of being a member of the spiritual community, and how are we living into the light and healthy aspects of that, and alchemizing and coming to terms with and processing the shadow to have that come through in a healthy way, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy, again, to look at, oh, I'm more spiritual, I'm more woke, I'm exempt from this type of inquiry. Nope, we're not. None of us are. We're not exempt from it, and it's a real asshole move to think that we are.
Yeah, because love and light is no different than hopes and prayers, right? Is that the thing that they get when there's a school shooting?
Oh God, right? Yeah.
Right? That we don't,
Speaking of, oh God, right? Yeah, sending prayers.
Right, that's what they get. Instead of taking action and making change,
passing gun laws.
We have prayers that go for children that are shot in our country.
Yep.
So don't be that guy. Like, if you look at that and you go, yeah, that's not actually what we should be doing, then don't do it. And then, like, under a different guise with different vocabulary, because we have different vocabulary, doesn't mean that it's actually a better system.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Same
thing.
It's the same avoidance thing in a different package. I want to talk about people being assholes about COVID for a minute.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Who here is a trained virologist or epidemiologist or microbiologist?
You are a biologist.
I am a biologist, but I work at like systems biology and macro stuff and animal physiology and behavior. Those are my degrees, right? In animal physiology and behavior, and some stuff in genetics also, and then working on like more systems ecosystem stuff, right. But not the micro at all.
Right.
Right. So crickets, right? That was the point of like crickets.
Well, not me. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People have been assholes about COVID and have used like spiritual love and light is going to protect us. So I don't need to worry about me. I'm healthy. I know about superfoods. I've worked through all my trauma. I work out. I do yoga. So I don't need to worry about me. So why are we wearing masks? Like, oh my gosh, I don't know why we give a shit because I'm fine. My immune system is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will be protected by my guides, or my guides told me that I'm not getting COVID or something like that, right?
Yeah, totally.
Unhelpful, people.
It's
Unhelpful.
great if you believe that, honestly, amazing. More power to you. Please believe in the power of your body, your immune system, that you are an invincible being on this planet. Please allow yourself that amazing vibrational shift into who you are and do everything you can to build your body and your immune system.
Yes. And
Yes,
draw the line
at
where it crosses,
talking about it all the time.
talking about it all the time and shaming people for wearing masks or washing their hands or taking precautions, right? That's where it crosses into asshole behavior.
Right.
Is saying that, like, oh, it is wrong that we should wear masks, or that we should be mandated to do whatever, um or like, I'm not worried about social distancing and I'm having a cuddle party and a massage party and having all these people over for medicine ceremony, right? Like, that's asshole territory, people.
Yeah. And I know a lot of our community is doing this stuff. And like I know because I hear about it, our community is gathering. And it's like, yes, you are maybe just risking yourself, but you're not, because there's a lot of people in your community who you are risking that are um, in some ways not going to be okay if they get it. And we just don't know. Like, that's the thing about not knowing. You can just not know. You can just not know. And it's okay to not know. And it's okay to give something some space and some time to sort itself out in the unknowingness.
Right. Yeah, I would say, if we look at, again, where where is there more likely to be harm, right? If we're purely looking from like a harm reduction standpoint, right? In terms of, is it more likely that I will cause harm by wearing a mask and washing my hands and practicing social distancing and not spouting my mouth off to other people? Or is it more likely that I will cause harm by not wearing a mask and not practicing social distancing and potentially, coming into contact with people who are exposed? Guess which one is more likely to potentially cause harm, right? So if we're purely looking at it from that perspective, it is our responsibility to like cause as little harm as possible. I hate that I have to say that, right? But that's a thing. And, it doesn't mean don't live your life. It doesn't mean don't do anything at all, right? But be smart about it and be conscious about it. And I think most importantly, don't shame other people for taking the precautions that they feel are necessary and safe for them and are aligned with their ability to be in the world.
Yeah, because you just don't know. You don't know what someone's experience is. You don't know what their home life is. You don't know anything about most people. So it really is the shaming piece, right? And if you're super like, we should be wearing masks all the time and not leaving our house and everything should be shut down, like that's great too. And you don't have to shame people for being afraid of vaccines or being afraid of a government rule or any of these things that other people are really concerned about and in a little bit of internal crisis over. Like,
Right.
people's shit is coming up in every direction. People are scared for their families, for their kids, for their grandparents, for themselves. They're scared for their businesses. They're scared for their income. They're really concerned about all kinds of things. Dating sucks. It's really hard right now. Like, we're all going through it, people, in one way or another. By the time COVID's over, I'm gonna have like 10 cats, you guys. Like, that's the reality of what's going on, because I'm like, well, I guess I can't date. I'm gonna get another fucking cat.
Uh-huh. How many cats are in your house right now?
2 cats now, from
Bless
1
you.
till 2 today. Today came the second cat.
Oh my God.
So eventually it's just going to be a mess in here. There's going to be cats like,
And we won't judge you. because
That's what I'm asking you, not to shame and judge me for becoming a crazy cat lady during COVID, because there is nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. All I can do is collect cats and build altars in my house. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to build altars. Cats are going to knock them down. I'm going to start all over.
it's a
That's life.
beautiful cycle, right? That's what you're doing, and I'm doing
Cycle of life.
oh my God, right? And and I'm doing the like I'm working out and being outside all the time and spending time with my dog, right? Like that's my coping situation happening here.
Right.
But with all of this, I mean, it's possible to be an asshole both ways, and I had the uncomfortable position recently of being at family dinner and having like my brother and sister-in-law getting into it with my mom multiple times in pretty much every single family gathering because my mom is on the anti-vax and the not wearing a mask. I don't like wearing a mask either,
Nobody likes wearing a mask, FYI.
nobody, right? Like nobody, let's just be real about that. But like not wearing a mask and not in a super, it's not like she was going to the store and not wearing one, right? But just in expressing that those were her viewpoints. And then my brother and sister-in-law, both of whom work in conjunction with the medical field, jumping down her throat about like the shaming and the blaming and the blah, blah, blah. And neither of them, I was sitting there and my dad isn't saying anything, right? And so I'm just sitting there listening to like both of them being so strident in their viewpoints and having absolutely no acknowledgement for the truth of what each other are saying. And it was probably like at the fourth or fifth family dinner that I actually said something because I was just so fed up with it. And I had not said anything up to that point because I was like, I'm not getting involved. This is my birthday. I don't want to go here. Yes, this was happening at my family birthday dinner. It was terrible. But having the experience of like eventually calling everybody out and saying, you know what, like y'all are adults and everyone's going to be making their own decision. And yes, what you're saying is true. And yes, what you're saying is true. And it doesn't make any of us wrong. So let's just acknowledge that there is truth in all of this and stop fighting with each other about it, And that's it was happening in my own family, right? It's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere. And I put a post up about this recently where my question is, am I just attaching myself to more story and storytelling and convincing and arguing and fighting and needing to be right? Or is where I'm putting my time, attention, and energy towards something that is a productive, either work on myself or creation in the world, doing something positive in the world, doing something beneficial, being a beneficial presence, or working on myself and becoming a better person. Like that's where I'm putting the anchor of where I'm going to stand on all of these things, because I can see points of view from every direction. Everybody's somewhat right. And I just feel like we are such powerful beings. We have so much potential, so much energy, so much that we can offer. And we are wasting so much time and energy on arguing amongst ourselves instead of creating real change and devoting ourselves to things that make us better people, make us happier, more joyful, bring more light into our own personal lives, and then give us something to bring to the world.
Mic drop.
That's how to not be a spiritual asshole. Let people have their experiences. Right. They are having the experience that they need to have for their own personal evolution and growth. Mm-hmm. And you shaming them, blaming them, bossing them, criticizing them, making them wrong, calling them stupid is not going to actually shift them. That's not how people change.
Kat, what's your motto? I know you've shared it on here before. Every day.
Every day, in every way, I'm getting better and better.
Uh-huh. I've also heard you say it as every day, in every way, I am becoming a better person. Right? So really, like that's what you're talking about here is looking at where do we actually have power, right? That's one of the things I want to come back to. And a lot of the asshole moments that we've talked about in here are coming from this place of feeling is like it's trying to extend our power, trying to assert power in an area where we don't actually have any power, right? We have absolutely no power to be in judgment of anybody or in some type of weird energetic dynamic where we are all knowing or all woke and all fabulous. No, it's like we have power here.
I am the all fabulous.
Right. I don't know. I was watching Queer Eye the other day. Where that came from. But we have power here in this organism, in this moment, in this experience. And the best use of our power, the best use of our creative potential is to direct all of that internally so that we can be effective in the world around us. That's, I think, one of the big pieces is like a lot of us and a lot of the people that, again, not trying to be an asshole. Most of the people that we're talking about, like my brother and sister-in-law, like, and my mom, they're not trying to be assholes to each other. They're sharing this from a place of love and genuine caring about each other and wanting everyone to be safe and healthy in their own way, not trying to cause harm. And that yet they end up coming off as total assholes and making everyone super uncomfortable and tensing everybody up and having this really like kind of shitty experience, right? Same with anyone who, oh, Kat, you were telling me about something that you saw someone post about the channeling. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Mm-mm.
Someone
No.
channeled George Floyd.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
that's a spiritual asshole move, right?
Yeah.
Channeling some white lady. Some white lady channeled George Floyd and said that we shouldn't be protesting, go home, everything's fine, love and light.
Right. His
Basically.
spirit was like, don't protest, don't use my
That's not
death.
what I want. I don't want my death to be used for racial equality, purposes.
Right.
Um, so that's a spiritual asshole move. Don't do that. Okay. If you are receiving information, sit with that for a while. Ask the question, is this going to hurt others if I put this information out? Even if it's what you're getting, even if you believe in it 100%, maybe rein that sucker back in and go, nah, not today. Not going to do that. Not going to be that guy.
Yeah. Right. And then, take all of that desire that you have for supporting people, right? And because all of this is coming from a desire to be a beneficial presence in the world, like I feel pretty confident in saying that, right?
Mhm.
People are offering love and light because they want to help, and again, it's coming through a really distorted way. Or people are trying to help other people make more money because they want other people to make more money and be more empowered, and yet it's coming through in this really distorted, shamey way. So rather than trying to exert your influence in this external capacity and come off as an asshole by trying to change or fix or somehow make other people wrong, how can we regulate our internal reality so that we can truly be more effective in a way that it genuinely is empowering and aligned and working with the principles of energy and of correspondence and love, law of attraction and joy and light and love in a way that is informed and aware of all of the different factors as much as possible of privilege and of in all of its forms and of staying in our lane. If you're not an epidemiologist or virologist or like world health professional, like stay in your fucking lane. And don't think that because you read some articles and watched a TED talk on COVID, you know any more than your next door neighbor who probably read the same articles and saw the same TED talk, right? But looking at where do we actually have power and how can we be as informed as possible of all of the unintended implications of our words and our actions and our work in the world, and try to be as integrous as possible in being a source of creative, generative, life affirming action for omnipositive consciousness, meaning like for the benefit of everybody as much as possible.
Yep. All right.
That's how
I
to
think
not be a spiritual
we've had enough. Okay, this is a lot. I think we've been talking for a long time. I have no idea what time we started, but yeah. So I guess there's so many ways that we can be a spiritual asshole. So what we want to leave you with is to do your own personal assessment of, am I being a spiritual asshole right now? And maybe write that write that at the top of a page and start looking at ways that you've been in communication with people. If you're feeling triggered, you might be a spiritual asshole in that moment. So look at when you're getting triggered by other people. If you're feeling judgmental, this might be a moment when you could be a spiritual asshole.
This is sounding like a drug commercial, right? Like, have you experienced symptoms of triggering, of judgment, of wanting to boss other people around? Well, you might just be a spiritual asshole.
Right.
Talk to your favorite practitioner about how to come into true, authentic alignment of your own empowered self. Side effects may include greater happiness and joy, greater true empowerment and upliftment of others around you, and alignment with your core authentic purpose in this lifetime.
All right, I'm
Sorry to
sold.
interrupt. I just had
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. So those places, being triggered, feeling judgmental, wanting to educate people, needing to defend yourself, feeling your own sense of maybe shame inside. That might be a place where we react from a place and start shaming other people. All of these are different places where we might become spiritual assholes. And to start looking at our privilege, look at all of the privilege that you have. Be grateful for all of the privilege that you have. It's been an amazing gift to your life. It's gotten you this far. Isn't it incredible that you have had all of this amazing abundance of gifts that have rained down upon you throughout your lifetime? Be grateful for the privilege, and then acknowledge that it is actually privilege, and that might inform the way that you communicate and create the conditions for you being a spiritual asshole. And be compassionate to yourself and to others. Get off the internet. Stop. Just stop. Just stop the internet. Stop, stop, stop. Go outside, take a walk, go get a new cat. You're going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. This too shall pass. You don't actually have to comment on it. It's going to be okay.
Love that. And you can also further your own education, your own energetic education, by tuning into any of the 106 other episodes of our podcast that we have. They're all available on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that you can think to find a podcast episode. It's probably there. Oh man, we've got so many things that we've already covered, and so many, so many more topics to go. So please do feel free to like, subscribe, and follow us so that you can receive the latest updates of whenever we do put out new episodes and information. We will be getting back on a regular cycle with this now that Kat is settled in her beautiful temple home. And if you do feel inclined to support us financially, we will happily receive that blessing. It does cost us money to produce this podcast, and it is our pleasure and our joy to do this work. And if you'd like to support the ongoing endeavors of creating this information, then you can either become a patron of our work at patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. That's patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions. Or you can send us a donation through PayPal to shamansistersessions@gmail.com using the PayPal as a friend option. We appreciate your support. And any announcements, Kat?
5 Elements for Empaths starts August 16th. So of 2020, if you're, whenever you see this, the next lead version will be August 16th, 2020. So if you are interested in Qigong, emotional alchemy, understanding the elements, the 5 element theory of Chinese medicine, and getting some amazing practices and working with me in a group container where you get one-on-one support inside the group from me, then I would say get over to my website, katherinebird.com, and check out the 5 Elements for Empaths. And then I also have my mentorship and training program, Heroes, which is ongoing. You can join anytime. And that is an incredible container to be able to drop in on meditation tools and techniques to develop your practice. We're slowly moving into deepening into internal alchemy practices and Qigong, standing energy practices, mini courses in there all the time, lots of interesting stuff, and live calls, live support, live practice with me. So those are great ways, affordable ways that you can engage with my work and, get your practice together. Let's take this to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And both of those are truly amazing. I want to just say total plug for Kat's amazing work. Heroes is awesome. You'll see me in there. And as far as working with me goes, I do have space for 1 or 2 one-on-one clients. If you would like to come into some deep work with me, then I am opening up space for 1 or 2 people now at this time. So you can go ahead and either send me an email or apply through my website, joyofenergy.com. And the focus of that work would be some deep dive work into embodiment and translation of your energy, all the practices that you already have, how to make you more effective, more aligned, and translating that through the body in conjunction with rewilding. So it's called Embody Wild, working with embodiment rewilding principles of shamanism and alchemy to move transformation through you and through your life in the way that it is being asked for. So if you'd like to do that, again, through my website, joyofenergy.com, you can apply there or send me an email and we'll get the conversation rolling.
Amazing. Thanks, Michelle. It's so good to be back on the podcast.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Nice to see you, and we'll see you next time.